Hey everybody, this is Ron, and today I want to talk about a fantastic new comic by Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones called Dracula Book 1, The Impaler. This is the first of 4 graphic novels focusing on one of the most famous literary characters of all time. I'm very familiar with both of these creators, especially Kelly Jones from his work on Batman, Deadman, Swamp Thing, the list goes on. He's been one of my favorite artists for quite some time now, so he's always on my radar. I also enjoyed a lot of Matt Wagner stuff. Obviously, there's Grendel, Sandman Mystery Theater, etc. These guys are 2 legends in the comic book industry. With all that being said, it's no surprise that their first true collaboration turned out to be something very special. This couldn't have come out at a better time for me because for the last 2 years, I've gotten really into Bram Stoker's novel, and this extension or companion of that story did not disappoint. This book was a crowdfunded project on Kickstarter because both of these guys wanted to have complete creative freedom, and you could tell it was a huge labor of love. Every single aspect of this book is top-notch. The quality of the hardcover is great, and I love the European-sized paper that they went with. It really makes Kelly Jones' art even more grand and dramatic, which is a huge selling point to get this on Kickstarter. Dark Horse Comics released the trade paperback version, but the Kickstarter is the only place you can get this nice hardcover, so that's a pretty cool perk. The most interesting thing about this book is that it's not a retelling of the Bram Stoker novel, but instead, it has a heavy focus on Dracula himself. If you've ever read the original novel, then you'll know that Dracula is more of an ominous presence lurking in the shadows. And what I mean is he's basically not physically in the book that much. So this first book tells the story of Dracula before he was a vampire. And Kelly Jones does not hold back with the impalement sections. It's so brutal and unforgiving, and the cool thing about Vlad is he didn't eventually become a vampire and then turned evil all of a sudden. He was a complete monster right from the start. It's so fascinating to go on this journey with him that you almost root for him at times. The unique thing about this comic is that it covers ground that no one has ever really touched before, and it's amazing that this whole first book is pretty much based on a couple sentences of the novel, when Van Helsing explains that Dracula attended the Scholomance, which is basically a school for the black arts run by Satan himself. So this whole premise is a brilliant choice for a comic book because it opens up a whole world that we didn't see in the book. It's not just vampires, there are witches and demons, and it gives Kelly Jones a chance to draw a variation of creepy things, which he always excels at. The coloring by Jose Villarrubia is really great and a departure from the type of darker coloring I'm used to seeing with Kelly Jones' work. The bright colors ended up being a brilliant choice because it makes everything pop, and it also looks like old school comics, but not in a forced retro throwback kind of way. This book still looks fresh and new. The coloring also doesn't hinder any of the creepiness because the book is still very unsettling at times regardless of the color palette. The writing is also really great, which I've come to expect from Matt Wagner. The story itself is deceptively simple but powerful, and it's a rare type of origin story that doesn't ruin what you previously thought about the original work. If anything, it enhances it. I can't wait to go back and read my copy of Dracula now that I've read this comic because it puts a lot of things in a new light, and it'll be very interesting to fill in some of the cracks. When it comes to horror, not a lot of books have the kind of aesthetic that this one does. Kelly Jones' art is truly unique, and I love the atmosphere he creates with his work. I see a lot of different influences like Hammer horror films or Universal monster films, but when he combines different things together, it truly becomes his own thing. I particularly love the demonic faces in the architecture that he puts in a lot of his work. It's kind of like his Kirby crackle at this point, and he draws capes like no one else. Obviously, a lot of credit also goes to Matt Wagner for really thinking outside of the box to come up with a Dracula story that is very fresh and exciting. There are so many adaptations with this character, but no one has ever done something this imaginative before, in my opinion. The only thing that was sort of jarring on the first read-through was the section when Satan reveals the dragon of the apocalypse to Dracula. And at first, it seemed kind of out of place in a Dracula story because I thought it was going too much into the fantasy Lord of the Rings type of direction. But then I listened to an interview where Matt Wagner was talking about how that dragon is in all of the folklore with the Scholomance. So he was being as accurate as possible, which is great. So the only negative thing I could have said turned out to be just as interesting as everything else in this book, and now I want to read more about that aspect of this material. I'd also like to point out that I think this is the first crowdfunded comic I've purchased that can be considered a new classic. I've gotten some decent books in the past through crowdfunding, but ultimately I just end up reading them once and forgetting about them. And that is not the case with this one because I can see myself going back to this book every year around Halloween time. I don't really do ratings on this channel, but this is easily a 10 out of 10 book. This is the work of two creators at the top of their game, completely free to do whatever they want, and what you see is what you get with this story. Wagner isn't telling you how to feel or how to think. He's writing a faithful character study on Dracula, and it's completely unforgiving, like I said before, and also unpredictable, which makes for a thrilling read. I'm also very excited for book 2, which will deal with Dracula's brides and how they came to be, which sounds like it will top even this first fantastic volume. So I highly recommend this book for comic book fans and fans of horror in general. So go check that out on Kickstarter if you're interested, and please be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. Thanks for watching.